This stage on the New York Times is literally going to be known in the minds of most people as the humiliation stage for the New York Times, where men that are impressive go on and completely eviscerate this woke, pathetic garbage that they try to propagate.
We did the right thing anyway.
What a profound statement, but that is a foreign statement to leftists because they don't believe in right and wrong, most technically speaking. They don't believe in better and worse. Those categories of existence are oppressive mechanisms used by the patriarchy to oppress people. This is the reason why they're devoid of morality and are willing to celebrate an assassination, a literal killing. The left supports murder. That's not surprising. They had a murder truck outside their convention.
Okay, so let me ask you about that, though. There was blowback. I think
again, he's going back to what is this, dude? Why aren't you asking Bezos? So, okay, why do you feel as though it's the right thing? Or that's a very basic, low IQ question, but it would be better than this question. Again, going back to the blowback, who cares what an irrelevant person thinks? You think Bezos cares what a random editor has to say? It's just narcissism. It's insane. Why are they talking about the opinions of a random person or even the opinions of a bunch of people who were repudiated in an election to historic scales rather than saying what is actually true? What matters? This is a microcosm of why no one trusts the media, and the media deserves to die because they have embodied this utter, total, broken narcissism which is infecting them. It's absolutely crazy. They're hiding behind the idea of why didn't you endorse a candidate? But if they had endorsed Trump, they would have been even more upset. What they're really saying is, why didn't you endorse us? Why aren't you a part of our cult? You're not a good person now. And what they're trying to do is haul him before the jury of these fraudulent, incompetent, mentally castrated people and be like, Jeff Bezos, you're about to be out of the club. Are you sorry for what you did? And Jeff Bezos is like, no, because you're all failing. What are you doing? What is wrong with you?
Growing the GDP. You have to grow the denominator. And that means you have to grow GDP at, 3, 4, 5% a year. And, let the national debt grow slower than that. If you can do that, this is a very manageable problem. Permitting and regulation. You can't build a bridge and all these things. You know what they are. We see these examples all the time. We need to be able to build solar fields and everything else.
So you're optimistic.
I'm super optimistic
about this president. And the reason I ask is
because again, they're just dedicated to the cult. Why did you ask him about solar? Why didn't you ask him about the banking system, capitalism, the reason why companies thrive? Dude, the reason I'm upset is because what is this pathetic retreat from intellectual seriousness that we're witnessing here? This is supposed to be the New York Times. How far have we fallen? You mean people are digesting this, that they're reading this? For the fourth time in a row, it was, you're not a part of our cult? You mean we're not the by de facto good guys? This is a type of mind virus that literally has to be beaten out of these people. Yo, guys, I wasn't planning to make this today's video, but I just found it so interesting. In the mornings, I like to watch informational videos about very impressive men to sort of start my day, calibrate myself, maybe learn something. But Jeff Bezos in this interview is saying something so interesting that I thought it should be a video. He's talking about how his decision to make the Washington Post, in his words, have the perception of less bias was the right decision to make. And he's saying this to a New York Times reporter who's trying to get him to apologize and bow to the left-wing cult. And in this moment, I see the power of our movement, the power of not being afraid of these degenerate tyrants, to the point where the capitalist class of enterprising men who aren't really interested in politics, they're interested in growing empires, not only aware of our influence and power, but of the fact that we're standing against those who are evil. Those being the sycophantic, psychopathic, narcissistic, incompetent leftists who believe themselves to be superior to you and me.
Trust surveys have been done for many decades now, and the media has been going down in those surveys for decades.
And the fact that they don't talk about the fact that they're going down in trust and take action to reverse it shows not only their narcissism, because they believe they are above the accountability which stems from reality and feedback from individuals, but they think it reveals that their purpose is not serving the people, but serving something else. What may that be? Most people will say the government or the leftist regime. I think it's something more abstract. They are serving the spirit of resentment, that which animates left-wing ideology itself, not even a single human. Just as left-wing ideology, it doesn't emanate down from one very evil person in a dark room making decisions. There are many evil people in dark rooms making decisions, but they're doing so in service of a spirit of resentment to reality and objective, coherent parameters that it's very difficult to fathom the level of that resentment.
They've always been able to hang on to the one, small positive. They're always above Congress.
This is funny. They've been trusted more than Congress for decades, except not now.
And this year they lost even that, falling below Congress, which...
Bro, the thing is Jeff Bezos is saying this in a room full of New York Times readers, which is fantastic. While X is lapping them in viewership, he's sitting in a New York Times room saying the media is failing and they haven't done anything to fix it. Which exposes, again, their fraudulence.
Not easy to achieve. Congress was thrilled, by the way, not to be at the very bottom of the list. And so we just decided that the pluses of doing this were very small. And
you can see even on the face of this New York Times reporter who's talking to Bezos and is the same guy who was involved in that viral Elon Musk clip where Elon told the CEO of Disney to go fuck himself, that the reality of their situation hasn't sunk in. They're still comfortable believing themselves to be superior to you. There's the air of superiority, the smirking, the laughing at the notion that, oh, people view us as untrustworthy, where, well, they don't know enough. They're not as good as us. They're not a part of our club. This is why your trust is at zero. This is why you're failing. Basically, every month, CNN reports a lower viewer rating. It's completely embarrassing. It's going to get to a point where there are like 100 people watching CNN.
It added to the perception of bias. The newspapers and media in general, if they are going to try and be objective and independent, they have to pass the same requirement.
It's so bizarre that it takes a guy worth hundreds of billions of dollars to come in and say this to these people. It actually takes a guy worth $200 billion to say, hey guys, what are you doing here? You've been failing for years. What's wrong with you?
That a voting machine does. They have to count the votes accurately. And there's a strong perception. Not all of it is the media's fault.
It is 100% the media's fault.
A lot of external factors involved too. But where we
that is true. Like women believing men can get pregnant, and anyone who says otherwise is a bigot.
Can do something, we should.
Okay, but let me ask you, and you know that there was blowback. I just want to read you. This is Marty Barron, who was your former editor.
Dude, this guy is trying to get Bezos to be like, oh my gosh, you're right, there was blowback, I'm so sorry. What he's doing right now is he's reverting to the only mechanism the left-wing ideology knows, which is demonization and slander. We're going to call you a bad person. What are you going to say about this? Because as soon as you say to them, wait a second, this prism of intellectual brokenness in the form of identitarianism you are trying to foist onto me to say that I'm a bad person is invalid and fraudulent, they have nothing left. It's a very shallow toolbox. The only thing they have is you're not a part of the right identity group. Oh, right now, this New York Times supporter, in a very smug way, in a way that is very bizarre and cringe to watch, rather than responding to what Bezos just said honestly and thoughtfully, or even in an inquisitive way, is saying instead, are you sure you want to go down this road? Because I'm about to call you a bad person. That's what's happening here. It's bizarre. Bezos just said he's doing the right thing.
That paper, he said, this is cowardice with democracy as its casualty. David Remnick said,
desperately being like, please believe we're the right group of people. If you don't agree with our cult, you're a threat to democracy. Is this line not dead yet? Have you not learned? Leftism doesn't believe in learning, though. Not when it references objective reality, as all learning inevitably does. This is the reason why they're very inflexible from their positions of incongruence and insanity, because to change their position is to admit that objective reality exists rather than everything just coming from their ideology.
If Jeff Bezos had said 2 years ago that he thought
the opinions of this random irrelevant person who was a leftist and voted for Kamala is completely worthless.
The editorial-
That's the right word, worthless. But the New York Times is like, but this person who once worked for you said that you're a bad person if you don't agree with us.
Page, you get
Like, what?
rid of endorsements, all of them. You could argue the case one way or another, but he was effectively suggesting that.
But at this point, it's too bad because we can't have, the stakes are too high. We can't have an alpha, masculine, competent billionaire who's beyond our control disagree with us and serve the American people and fix all the problems that we've created and put America first and stand for free speech, freedom, individuality, liberty, logic, reason, rationality, masculinity, and against insanity, divisiveness, intellectual debauchery, identitarianism. What do you mean? We can't have that.
Given this scenario with the timing of it.
Look at if I had the prescience to think.
Completely pathetic. The New York Times is a disgrace, and I'm very glad to say that X is getting 1,000 times more views than them.
Think about this topic at all 2 years before. That would have been better for perception reasons. But in fact,
Bezos basically just said, if I would have known the way this was going, I would have done this 2 years ago, meaning he would not have endorsed a candidate earlier, because the offense that the left is upset about is the New York Times or the Washington Post not endorsing Kamala.
Of it.
Look at if
It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. They're hiding behind the idea of why didn't you endorse a candidate? But if they had endorsed Trump, they would have been even more upset. What they're really saying is, why didn't you endorse us? Why aren't you a part of our cult? You're not a good person now. And what they're trying to do is haul him before the jury of these fraudulent, incompetent, mentally castrated people and be like, Jeff Bezos, you're about to be out of the club. Are you sorry for what you did? And Jeff Bezos is like, no, because you're all failing. What are you doing? What is wrong with you?
I had the prescience to think about this topic at all 2 years before. That would have been better for perception reasons. But in fact, we made this decision. It was the right decision. I'm proud of the decision we made. And it was far from cowardly because we knew there would be blowback.
There's such a massive, unbridgeable divide between the unthinking, pathetic, incompetent leftists who fancy themselves tyrants and above objective reality and morality and you, and those of us who are trying to build a better world, build a future based on individuality, freedom, morality. They hate us because they're driven by the resentment for reality itself. That's why leftists are called Satanists, because their resentment is for coherence itself.
We did the right thing anyway.
Okay, so let me ask you about that, though. There was blowback. I think
again, he's going back to what is this, dude? Why aren't you asking Bezos? So, okay, why do you feel as though it's the right thing? Or that's a very basic, low IQ question, but it would be better than this question. Again, going back to the blowback, who cares what an irrelevant person thinks? You think Bezos cares what a random editor has to say? It's just narcissism. It's insane. Why are they talking about the opinions of a random person, or even the opinions of a bunch of people who were repudiated in an election to historic scales, rather than saying what is actually true, what matters? This is a microcosm of why no one trusts the media, and the media deserves to die because they have embodied this utter, total, broken narcissism, which is infecting them like a virus that turns people into zombies. That's what it does. I've seen the glaze over people's eyes when you violate their cult. They're like, wait a second, I have to think outside the parameters of this counterfeit narrative that grants me virtue and status, allegedly. Well, they were educated, weren't they?
Blowback, and we did the right thing anyway.
Okay, so let me ask you about that, though. There was blowback. I think
Jeff Bezos' facial expression.
And we did the right.
Look at his expression when this New York Times reporter looks back to his paper and says, but there was blowback, right?
Thing anyway.
Okay, so let me ask you about that, though. There was blowback. I think
Bezos is like, what? 250,000
people canceled their subscriptions. So did you think when you were doing this?
250,000 people canceled their subscriptions. For what? $1? Isn't the Washington Post literally $1? Like, you're asking Jeff Bezos about $250,000 a year? What type of mental fog is this, dude?
That some people were going to say that actually it creates less trust in media? I mean, right, part of it.
Right, less trust. Because, again, they have to be the majority. In their head, they have to be the only people that matter. Even after an election where they've been decimated, where it's been proven that most people totally reject them and see them as frauds, they're still like, no, we can't be seen as frauds. No, you can't disagree with us. You can't use logic. Our ideology grants virtue. No, it doesn't. You were broken. This is the reason it takes literally the two richest men in the world. Elon Musk went on the stage saying the same thing. Now Jeff Bezos is on the stage saying the same thing. The left has failed. The left is corrupt and satanic. We see them celebrating someone's death. The left is satanic.
It was aimed at creating more trust in media. And at the same time, clearly there were other people saying maybe there's less trust.
No, I don't follow that logic.
You don't?
Mm-mm.
Because the logic this New York Times reporter just tried to employ is that as you stand against the massive distrust and corrupt apparatus, which is the left-wing co-opted arm of propaganda, the media, and say we're going to try to make this less corrupt, what you're doing is losing trust in us, the corrupt ones. That's what this reporter just tried to say. And Bezos is just like, I just told you you're corrupt. Hello? What's wrong with you? This is what I mean when I say they're psychopaths. They never self-evaluate.
And so, were you surprised at the?
Not really. We knew that this was going to be perceived in a very big way. As I said, these things punch above their weight.
And were you worried about that at all? I mean, this.
You can't worry. You can't do the wrong thing because you're worried about bad PR or.
What a profound statement, but that is a foreign statement to leftists because they don't believe in right and wrong, most technically speaking. They don't believe in better and worse. Those categories of existence are oppressive mechanisms used by the patriarchy to oppress people. This is the reason why they're devoid of morality and are willing to celebrate an assassination, a literal killing. The left supports murder. That's not surprising. They had a murder truck outside their convention.
Or whatever it is you want to call it. So this was the right decision. We made the right decision.
She's saying it again. We made the right decision. This is profound, guys.
I'm very proud of the decision.
So let me just.
Is he going to say again that there was blowback? That would be so incredible.
Ask you one related question, which is this.
This reporter is shaking right now. He's very nervous. You can tell.
You said in your.
Because he just was repudiated twice. But not only that, him and his entire apparatus of operating has just been called fraudulent by the second richest man in the world. Whereas before, it was done by the richest man in the world. It's not going well for them.
Opinion piece about all of this.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, not another random, irrelevant, worthless opinion. Oh my gosh, this person who has a genders degree from Yale, she has blue hair, of course, says that you're a bad person, masculinity is bad, and Donald Trump is a threat to democracy. How do you respond to this? Like, what is this, dude?
I thought it was fascinating. You said, when it comes to the appearance of conflict, I am not the ideal owner.
No, I'm a terrible owner
of the Post.
For the Post, from the point of view of appearance of conflict. There is.
Right. So this person is saying you're a bad owner. Like, okay.
Probably not a single day goes by where some Amazon executive or some Blue Origin executive or some Bezos Earth Fund leader isn't meeting with a government official somewhere.
And is that...
I would be a pure newspaper owner who only owned a newspaper.
It's so crazy that the left, after their complete defeat and obliteration, is still trying to say, if you meet with the people in power, this makes you a bad person. That obviously is so self-evidently ridden with mental errors that I don't need to go into dissecting it again in the same video on that level of detail. But what I will say is the level of narcissism that you see there, the psychopathy, is emblematic of a very dangerous brain virus. It's destroying especially women. It's wrecking them. It's wrecking left-wing women and very effeminate, weak men. There is a renaissance, though, in breaking their psyches.
Paper and did nothing else would probably be, from that point of view, a much better owner. Now, the advantage I bring to the Post is, when they need financial resources, I'm available. I'm kind of,
Bro. Bezos just said, basically, Those 250,000 people that canceled their subscriptions, yeah, they're fucking irrelevant peasants. Dude, CEOs in today's modern day and age communicate in a totally different dialect than men talked even 50 years ago. Because it used to be that you could say whatever you want and people would get it, right? The normal housewife, the mom would be like, yeah, he's being a man, he's saying what he thinks. Now it's like, oh my gosh, did you use a sentence that was kind of harsh? What are you, a bad person now? Like, that is in the ecosphere of the corrupt news media, now being of course replaced by X, and already is replaced. That that would be viewed as unacceptable. But Bezos, what he just did there is he said to the previous question before, just so that we're all clear, the people that cancel their subscriptions are irrelevant.
I think
This stage on the New York Times is literally going to be known in the minds of most people as the humiliation stage for the New York Times, where men that are impressive go on and completely eviscerate this woke, pathetic garbage that they try to propagate. It's hilarious. It's so funny.
Embedded underneath the fundamental question is this. In the Wall Street Journal,
and Bezos is just looking at him now, like in a very cold way. He's looking at him like, yeah, you just tried that, didn't you? You just tried to say that I cared about $250,000, didn't you? Look at that.
I think embedded underneath the fundamental question.
Bro, I'm giving you the inside science. I've actually met billionaires, unlike a lot of people. By the time I was 18, I had met, 4 different billionaires.
Is this, and the Wall Street Journal wrote about it, the New York Times has been writing about it, whether you had any worry in your mind about your other businesses, about Trump, and whether he would ultimately target an Amazon or target a Blue Origin as retaliation against negative coverage.
If we're talking about Trump, I think it's very interesting. I'm actually very optimistic this time around that we're going to see. I'm very hopeful about this. He seems to have a lot of energy around reducing regulation, and my point of view, if I can help him do that, I'm going to help him. Because
absolutely. But the thing is, that's enraging to the left. Understand where this is taking place. On the stage of the New York Times, where old single women read this newspaper to try to get an inkling of counterfeit virtue. Oh my gosh, can I read about the reason why we lost and why it's men's fault and how I'm better than them? Is that what I can read? And then they open up the New York Times and see this. And they're like, oh my gosh, you mean Trump's going to do a good thing? That breaks my worldview. And I don't mean just because of the random good thing that Trump is going to do that they have to accept. I mean that their cult of identitarianism is broken in that moment, which enrages them. Anytime you prove that something that they believe is false, you're not just proving that thing is false. You're proving that their entire ideology is counterfeit.
We do have too much regulation in this country.
Because their ideas aren't derivative from reality. Reality is oppression as far as they're concerned. Their ideas are derivative from the identitarian Marxist cult of victimhood.
This country is so set up to grow. By the way, all of our problems, all of our economic problems, like if you look at the deficit and the debt, the national debt, and how gigantic it is as a portion of GDP, these are real problems and they're real long-term problems. And the way you get out of them is by outgrowing them. You're going to solve the problem of the national debt by making it a smaller percentage of GDP, not by shrinking the national debt. But
it's very bizarre and eerie, I will say, kind of creepy to look at this New York Times reporter's face being, clearly demonstrating that everything Bezos is saying is sort of either in his mind lip service or irrelevant or unimportant, when it is actually the most important thing, and most Americans believe it's most important. So it makes me think, okay, so who is the New York Times serving exactly? What type of sycophantic, unintelligent, brain rot audience? Like, who does he think he's catering to right now? Because they've already been repudiated. So it's like you're just admitting to be a psychopath then?
By growing the GDP, you have to grow the denominator, and that means you have to grow GDP at 3, 4, 5% a year. And, let the national debt grow slower than that. If you can do that, this is a very manageable problem. So we need a growth orientation in this country.
Even the fact that Jeff Bezos is saying there is a problem here and it can be fixed not by you, but by those who beat you, is enraging to the left, because they want the narrative to be, oh my gosh, we were beaten unfairly because people were worse than us that voted. They're worse than us. That narrative, that gambit, failed.
This is the most
Can't say it enough.
important thing, a growth mindset. And we are the luckiest country in the world. We have all these natural resources, including energy independence. We have the best risk capital.
Bro, let's go. Let's go. We're just repeating facts that Trump says on stage. That's awesome.
System in the world by far. So the best risk capital system in the world by far. So, people get confused about why does the United States
Losers hate to hear this one.
have so much venture success, so much entrepreneurial success. There's so many advantages here, but we are burdened by excessive permitting and regulation. You can't build a bridge and all these things. You know what they are. We see these examples all the time. We need to be able to build solar fields and everything else.
So you're optimistic.
I'm super optimistic
about this president. And the reason I ask is
because again, they're just dedicated to the cult. Why did you ask him about solar? Why didn't you ask him about the banking system, capitalism, the reason why companies thrive? Dude, the reason I'm upset is because what is this pathetic retreat from intellectual seriousness that we're witnessing here? This is supposed to be the New York Times. How far have we fallen? You mean people are digesting this, that they're reading this? For the fourth time in a row, it was response to this bizarre question was, You're not a part of our cult? You mean we're not the by de facto good guys? What is wrong with this? Is a type of mind virus that literally has to be beaten out of these people. What am I witnessing here? Jeff Bezos, dude, that was the most interesting thing Jeff Bezos has said on stage so far. And the reporter's like, so you mean that our opposition could be good? Like, bro, this is the New York Times. How are they not embarrassed? How is every person who reads the New York Times not embarrassed by what we just saw?
All these things, you know what they are. We see these examples all the time. We need to be able to build solar fields and everything else.
So you're optimistic.
Like, ask him about solar fields, bro. But no, you mean Trump's a good person? What do you mean by that?
I'm super optimistic
about this president. And the reason I ask is because
I'm very optimistic that President Trump is serious about this regulatory agenda, and I think he has a good chance of succeeding.
What about the idea that he thinks that the press is the enemy?
You are the enemy, and you've proven that literally right here. And Bezos said at the beginning of this that you are the enemy. What type of like perverse stuff is this? You literally were told you have less trust than Congress. You have less trust than anything, and you're upset by a guy saying you're the enemy. You are the enemy, and you're the enemy for not even self-evaluating for 1 second. That's the trait of a narcissist, by the way. That's the trait of a psychopath. These people are psychopaths. They are insane, mentally broken. Guys, if you want to help me continue to beat these ridiculous tyrants, these pathetic anti-civilizational freaks, go to abrahambeyer.locals.com. Scroll down and press become a member. It costs less than the price of a donut, and you're really making a difference, believe it. So be sure to subscribe here, do that, and follow me on X. I appreciate all of you.